Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and today on Pokke's Classroom, we will be taking a look at Sparkle's pre-release analysis presented by yours truly, MrPokke. We definitely didn't stall for 2 hours on stream, and without further ado, let's begin with today's content.
Subscribe!
Alright, so I would love to have covered this a little bit sooner, but unfortunately, I still have Corpa, so it is what it is. But as of 9 hours ago, Sparkle's kit has been revealed to the player base. Basically, what her kit does is essentially there. It is just that she is lacking the multipliers. So we can't talk about her multipliers, we can't talk about her Eidolons, but pretty much the general gist of her kit as well as her signature light cone, we can talk about it, right? So we're basically just gonna go through generally what she do, so that when we do come out with Sparkle's CN unit analysis, it will be the much more in-depth version. So look forward to that upon her banner release, right? So, yep, Sparkle is our newest and first and only quantum harmony character to come with honkaistarrail, right? And before we even look at her kit, the very first thing that players have in mind is Mono Quantum is now finally going to be a thing, right? Silver Wolf, Fu Xuan, Sparkle, and then you either use Scylla, the clearly better choice, or you can use QQ. That's gonna be up to you. Okay, guys, honestly, I think Sparkle will work really well with QQ. But anyways, so that is one of the excitement that players has been looking forward to ever since the release of Silver Wolf, where essentially you can now mark the quantum weakness onto any stage, any enemy, and you will always be on element against set targets. Now, before we dive into Sparkle's kit, I just want to say a few words about Mono Quantum comp itself. Personally, I do believe that Mono Quantum is going to be an excellent comp, especially for the free-to-plays, new players, or people that just genuinely have poor relics, especially poor crit relics, where you cannot brute force your way through an off-element stage in difficult content such as Memory of Chaos, Pure Fission, or Golden Gears Storm Disaster, right? So being on element is gonna be greatly beneficial to these kind of players, because by being on element, not only do you have the reduced rest, right? You have toughness bar damage, which can cause weakness break, which is a huge help, especially for players who are struggling to clear content. But that being said, as of this day and age, it has been almost 10 months since the release of HonkaiStarrail. At this point, we have seen a lot of instances where we can in fact use off-element team comps to just straight up brute force our way through difficult content in Memory of Chaos and Pure Vision, whatever kind of stuff, right? So do look at Sparkle with an open mind, and don't think of it as she is only suited for example, Mono Quantum team comps, or she is only suited for example, QQ and Imbibitor Lune because she gives us skill points, right? I think Sparkle as a kit, she offers a lot more than what players might think, and is a lot more flexible than what players might think. So with that said, let's jump into what her kit has to offer. Character preview, I ain't gonna read all that, right? We're not here to do lore, right? I ain't gonna read all that, we're just gonna jump to skills. Jumping straight into her traces, when using basic attack, additionally generates energy. Now, we don't know exactly how much energy this is going to generate, but theoretically speaking, assuming that her skill still gives us back 30 energy, and her basic attack, as with any normal basic attack, gives us 20 energy, I wouldn't assume MiHoYo to give Sparkle so much energy generation such that it exceeds a skill's energy generation, because that would not make sense. So I'm thinking this trace is going to be very good, and it will make her basic attack probably somewhere between 25 to 30 energy. Just guessing, right? We have no idea what it is, but I'm just guessing, because it doesn't make sense if it's more than 30 energy, right? So that's going to be that pretty useful skill if we want to use our basic attack. Next thing is crit damage boost provided by the skill will extend until the start of the wearer's next turn. Now, this trace right here is basically equivalent to your Bronya's skill lasting until the unit's next turn. Keep in mind, this is not lasting 2 turns. So it will extend until the start of the wearer's next turn. It is not 2 turns, right? But one unit that can greatly benefit from this particular effect is none other than our general, Jing Yuan, the Lightning Lord. Because now, he is the Lightning Lord actually gains the buff from the crit damage boost, and it will last all the way until Jing Yuan's next turn. And he will no longer face the issue such as with Bronya's skill, when after Bronya buffs Jing Yuan and Jing Yuan's turn goes, Lightning Lord will not gain the benefit from Bronya's buff. So this is gonna be really, really good for our general and some other units that probably can come to a player's mind, which is basically most of the follow-up attackers, right? Your Nambi, your Clara, your Doctor Ratio, these kind of units with their kits damage coming outside of their turn, specifically follow-up attacks, because they do skill with crit damage, is going to be really, really beneficial, right? So that's going to be excellent trace, and you could consider running Sparkle in a follow-up team comp. I'm just putting it out there for you guys, right? Nocturne, increase all targets attack, additionally increase the attack of Quantum type allies based on the number of Quantum type characters in a single team. I'm gonna keep it a buck. We're gonna have to wait and see the multipliers on this, because if the multipliers is not very high, like let's just say it's like, I don't know, like 5% per quantum ally, or like even 10%, it is not a game-changing trace, I would say. Although 40% attack would be pretty nice, it is not game-changing. Like this skill, Artificial Flower, it actually is game-changing, because it straight up changes how you will work Sparkle, especially against a unit with follow-up comp. And this is basically just attack, so I would say it's not as significant as crit damage boost. So out of these three traits over here, personally, I think Artificial Flower shows the highest potential, especially if you want to use Sparkle to be continuously using a skill. Then this trait over here is probably going to be useless if you just want to spam Sparkle skill. And we'll look into Sparkle skill later on, right? And Nocturne is just, it's like attack, so it's like, it is what it is, right? So leveling of materials, right? So you guys can start pre-farming if you haven't. I've really pre-farmed since like goddamn, right? So go ahead and pre-farm all that kind of stuff, right? And now we'll jump into a technique. Unreliable narrator. Using the technique grants all allies misdirect for a certain time, will not be detected by enemies, and recovers a certain number of skill points for the team. Now, once again, we don't know exactly how many skill points can we recover from this technique, but that being said, assuming that we can use this technique without overlapping with another unit's technique, which is to say offensive technique, then we're pretty much always going to be using this so that we can start our battle off with more than 3 skill points or 4 skill points if you use a passerby, right? So this is going to be probably a really, really good technique. Okay, so basic attack, nothing much to say, right? He just what's the basic attack animation? Oh, she kicks them. She kicks them, chat. Alright, settle down. Alright, so she kicks them, and that's basically it. Anyways, talent. While Sparkle is on the battlefield, additionally increase the number of max skill points. Whenever an ally consumes 1 skill point, all allies damage increase. This effect lasts for a certain number of turns and can stack up to a certain number of times. So, at a glance, this talent make it seem that whenever anyone uses a skill point, you give a team-wide damage percentage buff, essentially. So it's kind of like Ranmei's skill, except that it's tied to your entire team using skill points. Also, increasing the maximum number of skill points your entire thing can hold, right? Which is going to be very crucial for Sparkle, since we do know that she generates a shit ton of skill points using her ultimate, using a technique. So having a higher ceiling for the skill point is going to be a natural. It's definitely going to be there. The question is whether should we be running Sparkle in a Duo DPS team comp, because we do know that this damages all allies damage dealt, it increases, right? So do we use this in a Duo DPS team comp scenario? Genuinely, if we are using Duo DPS, so for example, it's 2 DPS, 1 sustain and 1 support, I personally feel that Ranmei still serves this niche much better than Sparkle, specifically because when you look into a skill right here, it's going to be targeting a single ally, which means that you can't really use this for both allies, right? You can see, right, for the flowers, the eyes, the goldfish, she only targets Black Swan, she can't target Sampo. So because of this, the most significant buff from a skill is only targeted to a single ally, whereas for Ranmei, it's team-wide. So between Ranmei and Sparkle, you can only choose one duo support, then it's probably going to be Ranmei. So players, even though you see that this is all allies damage percentage increase, I wouldn't say Sparkle's niche is in duo DPS team comp personally, right? So that's basically it. And then talking about skill, increase crit damage for a certain number of turns. I have no idea why they decided to use Black Swan as an example, but yeah. Also cause the target's action to be advanced forward, and then when you use ability herself, she won't be able to trigger it. So this is an interesting skill because it will inevitably spark the discussion of, is this Jover for Bronya? Because it is basically what Bronya does, but instead of giving the target damage percentage and a whole turn, it is crit damage and some action value advance forward. Unfortunately, until we know the final values, until we know how the ultimate plays out and everything, we can't really give a definitive answer whether she like power creeps Bronya's existence. But that being said, action value advance forward, crit damage buff, these two things are definitely going to be extremely powerful for any crit DPS. You would definitely not run this with DOT, right? You would not run this with Black Swan. You would not run this with Kafka, right? So if we are going to be using a crit DPS with Sparkle, then chances are she's going to be a lot more universal than you think, right? She's probably going to be slotted into beyond just Mono Quantum Team Comms. You can probably run her beyond just Qing Quan and Imbibitor Lune. As long as your unit scales off of crit damage, action value advance forward and the crit damage buff is ultimately going to be beneficial, which is why I say Sparkle's universal application might be more than players think. And once again, we have to wait until her official release before we can talk into this in further details, right? So that's basically that for skill. And finally, her ultimate, the hero with 1,000 face. Replenish a certain number of skill points for the team and grants all ally cipher. Each stack increase damage boost of the talent by a certain percentage, lasting for a certain number of turns. So now MiHoYo tried to pull a fast one, right? Like they didn't really reveal to us how many skill points she recover, but during the live trailer event, you could distinctively tell that Sparkle, upon using her ultimate, replenished 4 skill points. It was actually revealed in the trailer. So this is public information and I'm not afraid to say it out, right? Sparkle's ultimate basically replenished 4 skill points. And yeah, you can just take that unknown as you will, right? They probably didn't expect people to be this like, you know, attentive to details, but you know, we are in Pokke's classroom, so we do know that this is 4 skill points. So now this brings us to the ultimate question. How skill point positive is Sparkle? Because we do know that her basic attack grants us additional energy, and theoretically speaking, if it is the same energy as our skill, theoretically speaking, it means that Sparkle could be as skill point positive as +7 skill points. What? She will just basically be an auto attacker, don't use a skill at all, and she's just there to generate us 7 skill points. Because even though she doesn't use her skill, right, she still has buffs not tied to a skill, which you can see here from the talent. Whenever any ally uses a skill point, we still get this damage percentage increase. So if players want to be extremely skill point positive, you just don't even use a skill at all, you can go up to +7 skill points with Sparkle's ultimate. But assuming that Sparkle does give us up to a +7 skill point positivity, would it be worth it to sacrifice Sparkle's skill, which gives us a crit damage boost as well as a action value advance boost? Now for that, we will need to see how impactful the actual action value advance is. Exactly how much more can Sparkle enable our DPS to go forward? It's like kind of like, would you use Bronya if all she does is basic attack and ultimate? Probably not, because her greatest strength lies in her skill. So it really depends on how important it is for Sparkle's action value advance and how much it can impact our DPS's damage rotation, turn rotation, all that kind of stuff, right? So for that, we will need to see. But if we need to use Sparkle's skill like every single turn, then her skill point positivity, it drastically goes down from +7 skill points to only +1 skill point. Because instead of being +1, +1, +1, +4, it is now -1, -1, -1, +4, which is only +1. So if that is going to be the case, Sparkle might not be as skill point positive as you guys might think she is, assuming that is the case. So this ultimately brings us to the final question before we move on to a light cone, which is, who is truly Sparkle's best DPS teammate? Is it truly Qing Quan or even Imbibitor Lune? Or could it be a hidden pick that people haven't been thinking about? Now for that, I'll leave it up to the food for thought and I'll leave it up to chat to cook. I won't really yap about it that much. And for that, please stay tuned to the Sparkle's CN unit analysis, because I'm sure you guys would love to hear the opinions from the CN player base, right? So that is basically that for Sparkle's kit. Hope you guys enjoyed. And before we wrap up this section, let's move on to her signature light cone. Right, Earthly Escapade, right?
What?
Earthly Escapade. Okay, escape. I don't know, right? Increase the wearer's crit damage by 32%. At the start of battle, wearer gains mask for 3 turns. All allies crit rate increased by 10% and crit damage increased by 28%. For 1 skill point, they recover. They gain 1 stack of Radiant Flame, and upon 4 Radiant Flame, they refresh mask and last up to 4 turns. So, at the very bare level, this light cone essentially translates to giving Sparko a 32% crit damage boost and giving our entire team a 10% crit rate and 28% crit damage boost. They said the wearer's allies have their crit rate increase, so I'm not exactly sure if the wearer's allies include herself or doesn't include herself. But based on the wording of Broken Kill, based on the wording of Fleetless, it does affect the wearer. If I'm not wrong, it should affect the wearer. Okay, I'm not wrong. You know what? I'm just gonna see what happens. But based on the wording of Broken Kill, it does stack on. So we'll see how it goes, right? But essentially, even if this does not impact Sparko, this is a 48 crit value buff to your entire team. To give an example of 48 crit value, if you have a 40 crit value gear in Honkai starrail, you are probably the top 0.0000001% of the player base to get a 40 crit value gear. And this light cone gives your entire team 48 crit value for free for 3 whole ass turns. Granted, you do need to let it charge back up again after the end of 3 turns, but because this thing lasts 3 turns, you're essentially gonna get back the Radiant Flame and cast this buff again, the 10% crit rate and 28% crit damage buff. So at a glance, this light cone is looking to be extremely synergistic with Sparko, and in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if players want to run this with other supports, right? You could run this with like your Yukong, your Asta, your even Bronya. It might be possible because Bronya does skill with crit damage, although you will lose the skill point coming on the outside. So I'm just saying this light cone, at a glance, it looks more universal than Ramei's light cone. And I think that is pretty much for sure, because Ramei's light cone is definitely a lot more niche compared to this. So yeah, it looks really good. But before you guys go ahead and think, oh my god, this is like insane, this is an insane light cone, before we talk about this very insane light cone, I want to raise a food for thought before we wrap up today's video, which is dance. I'm not sure if you guys have experienced the power of dance. Maybe not, because this is very noticeable if you guys are trying to go for very fast clears, like 0 cycles, 1 cycles. The power of dance is really good. You can feel it noticeably whenever you run team dance. But what if 2 dance? What if Sparko also uses dance? And specifically Sparko, because her kit revolves around action value manipulation based on her skill. And who else is great with Tingyun? Okay, you know what? That's a rhetorical. Everyone is great with Tingyun, right? Everyone is great with Tingyun. But that being said, a comp that works really well with Tingyun, theoretically speaking, Jing Yuan, Tingyun, Sparko. Theoretically speaking, because one of the greatest issue with Jing Yuan, when you used to pair him with like Ranmei doesn't really provide Jing Yuan the necessary speed buff he requires. He still needs to run speed boots, his damage is going to taper off a little bit. You pair him with Asta, is basically the 4-star equivalent, you get a speed buff, right? But in terms of buff, it is much lower than Ranmei or Bronya. And then if you pair Jing Yuan with Bronya, his Lightning Rod doesn't even gain Bronya's damage buff. But now with Sparko, and Jing Yuan isn't a very skill point intensive DPS. So now, potentially, your Jing Yuan could just go all in damage, all in attack, all in crit, no speed, and you have the power of 2 dance plus Sparko's action value forward advance. And the best part is, Duo dance, it action value advances your entire team. And the more action value Sparko gains, the more frequent she can cast her own skill. Which means, even if your Sparko is not at 200 speed, it could be very possible to do a 3-turn 0-cycle Sparko rotation because of the power of 2 dance. That is basically food for thought. I'll let you guys click on it. Really just food for thought. Just think about the impact of stacking on dance, especially with Sparko, right? Bronya could have been a thing, but Bronya is so freaking skill point heavy that it's just very difficult, and she just works so well with a signature icon. But now that Sparko is in the fray, our second action value advanced manipulator, Duo dance might very well be a thing. So, food for thought for the villagers. And with that, we have come to the end of this episode of CN. And with that, we have come to the end of Pokke's Classroom featuring Sparko's pre-release analysis, right? If you guys want to engage in further discussions, hop on over to discord.gg/Pokke's Village, where we're a very active community talking about Honkai Story on a daily basis. And if you guys check out my stream, that's gonna be the twitch.tv/MrPokke or youtube.com/MrPokke, right? I'm streaming at both platforms at the same time. Schedule will be updated on Discord as well. I'm very, very close to being a full-time content creator. Look forward to more streams, look forward to more videos. All the best for gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. I genuinely cannot believe this shit. I genuinely cannot believe this shit. I genuinely cannot believe this shit, guys. Did I say how I genuinely cannot believe this shit? I genuinely cannot believe this shit, guys.